Welcome to the Wolverine Confidential podcast, brought to you by Corewell Health. I am Andrew Kahn.
I'm Ryan Zook.
And I'm Aaron McMahon.
Michigan lost the game, getting dominated in the second half by number 1 Ohio State to fall in the rivalry for the first time in 6 years. What went wrong for the Wolverines at the Big House, and what went so right for Michigan basketball in Vegas? We discuss that and more coming up on Wolverine Confidential. All right, guys, good to be with you here Monday morning, December 1st, new month, and a couple of days after Michigan's 27-9 loss against number 1 Ohio State at the Big House. Michigan, of course, had won this game 4 straight years, had last lost in 2019. They didn't play the game in 2020. So this was kind of shocking in that way, just because it hadn't happened in a while. But again, Michigan a double-digit underdog in this game. Ohio State ranked number 1 in the country, hadn't lost since getting beat by Michigan last season. 27-9. We could break this thing down, but I guess, maybe what surprised you from this game, and maybe one thing that just didn't surprise you from this game. We could start with you, Aaron.
The biggest thing that surprised me was Michigan's just lack of punch offensively. They didn't have much at all. We thought coming out of the Maryland game, they'd figured things out with the passing game. Bryce Underwood put together a complete performance. Michigan played well. That was the narrative, at least coming out of it, right? Michigan was able to play a complete game, and they were playing some of their best football. They couldn't follow it up Saturday. The offense was, lacking rhythm. They had some big plays, but there was a lot of 0 yards and negative yard plays, and just they couldn't find a rhythm offensively, and that's really what doomed them. You got that vibe early when they got those two drives. They had to settle for field goals and couldn't punch it in the end zone, and then it was all downhill from there.
Yeah, no, it was an absolutely horrific offensive game plan. There's no really other way to put it. When we've seen Bryce Underwood have success this year, you're rolling them out, bootlegs, play action, and it's like, oh, biggest game of the year. Let's go back into like the Oklahoma mode and just completely conservative against a good defense. And it didn't work then, and it didn't work against Ohio State. It was like just watching the game back again too. It was truly appalling just to see the offensive play calling. Like, they only attempted 3 passes 10 plus yards downfield all game. Like, how are you going to catch Ohio State off guard if you're that conservative? It was just check down city, and Ohio State they had a field day. It was truly surprising to see how Michigan came out and executed a game plan, because it wasn't good enough at all. Like, you had that first play, 36-yard run, but then after that, there was just no passing game, no creativity, no wrinkles. Like, they won the past 4 games they weren't dominant, or they needed to throw some wrinkles in offensively to get some momentum, to have a big play, and there was none of that on Saturday. And I get the weather wasn't good at all. It was slippery on the field, I'm sure, especially in the second half with the snow. But Ohio State still put up over 400 yards. They still were able to move the ball. That to me was number one, that what stood out.
Yeah, it sounds like Ryan's clearly putting more on the coaches here, and then the game plan coming in, even than what happened actually on the field. In other words, the players, they maybe I wouldn't say they did the best with what they were given, but didn't like the game plan. Aaron, did you see some of the same?
Yeah, I'm not going to go that far. I think Michigan, in some respects, is playing with one hand tied behind their back without a functional running game. Like, Jordan Marshall started, he played, he had some big runs there early, but it was clear when he made that 10-yard catch there after his big run, he landed on his shoulder again. He wasn't the same after that. In fact, he didn't play. I think he had 2 carries after the first quarter. So Michigan, look, Bryson Cudsdall did what he could. He had one big run. He ran hard, but there weren't enough big plays on the ground to, I think, help open things up for the passing game. So I think that was part of it. Michigan did have some big plays through the air. The problem is there weren't enough of them, and they didn't come at the right time, especially late. So you could tell that Chip was trying to do things. It wasn't working. And it goes back to my original point. There weren't enough plus yard plays. Like, I can't tell you, going through the box score in the play-by-play, how many 0-yard plays Michigan had all game that really kind of stopped their drives. In the in the first drive of the second half. I'll go back. This is a perfect example. First drive of the second half, Michigan needs a score. Bryce Underwood completes a pass to Donovan McCulley down the field, threads the needle, 26-yard completion. Looks great. The next 3 plays, Michigan nets 0 yards, 2 plays for no gain, and then an incompletion. Like that was to me, that was a story of the game. They would have a big play, and then they couldn't follow up with it. And that goes back to, I think, Ohio State's defense did a very good job of kind of shutting down the line of scrimmage. But B, I think it speaks to Michigan's lack of volume, lack of playmakers. Yes, they have Andrew Marsh. He had 0 completions, didn't do a whole lot. Yes, they had a strong running game all year, but again, Jordan Marshall was injured, and they just don't have enough. They didn't have enough guys to make the big play, and I think that speaks. I think Michigan's inability to punch, to score on Saturday.
Right. I mean, you don't have Jordan Marshall, so adjust, and yet they're still trying to run it through Ohio State's offensive line with Bryson Tusdall. It's just like it's not working. And then you're second and 9, second and 10, like every series. You're not going to beat Ohio State like that. Run some screen. Like the offensive line wasn't very good either. So I get you don't want to just drop drop Underwood back and did him sacked because but the run blocking, there was no lanes at all, except for their 3 chunky runs of Jordan Marshall 36-yarder and 2 20-plus yarders from Tusdall. There was absolutely nothing on the ground game, and they continued to try to do it, and they just were stuck behind the sticks, and it just wasn't a recipe for success. I think they could have implemented a few more things to just try and change things up. But yeah, Ohio State was clearly the better team. That's why I picked them to cover. I knew, they didn't play anyone great, but like just watching them this year was just like they just had it all on both sides of the ball, and we saw that play out on Saturday.
Yeah, Ohio State, 10 for 17 on third down, 2 for 3 on fourth down. Michigan 1 for 9 on third and 0 for 1 on fourth. And of course, part of that is, the average distance to go on those plays. Like Zook mentioned, you run into a wall the first 2 downs. Now you got a 3rd and 8, something like that. Ohio State, it was much more manageable, for the most part. But you guys mentioned Andrew Marsh. We talked about him a lot coming into this game, obviously, the run he was on, the past 6-7 games. And just completely shut down. I mean, I saw some stories that noted, no targets or whatever. But, as we pointed out, like he was thrown to at least once and drew the pass interference call. But that was it. I mean, no catches in the box score. Can you guys share anything of what you saw from Ohio State as far as how they neutralized them?
Yeah, and watching the game, rewatching the game, it's tough to say because you don't have the all 22 view. But my guess is they did some things to take him out of the game. It was clear, right? Like it seemed like Donovan McCulley became Bryce Underwood's number 1 option. On Saturday, you saw that with the fade attempt there when Michigan hit the red zone there on the first drive. They went to McCulley there in the end zone and couldn't get there. So it was, to me, McCulley became Bryce's number 1 option. I don't know if they saw that as a matchup advantage or whatever, but Ohio State did a good job of taking Andrew Marsh out of the game. And again, it goes back to what I was talking about earlier. Michigan just doesn't have enough in the passing game to make a dent here. I mean, Ohio State took Andrew Marsh out of the game. Yes, McCulley had a couple nice catches, but that was it. I mean, the tight ends couldn't do anything in the passing game. Michigan had a bunch of throws to the running back that either netted 0 yards or a couple yards or even some negative yards plays. So Michigan was, again, they didn't have enough playmakers on the outside, and it spoke to, I think, Michigan's, again, inability to move the football on a regular basis.
Yeah, I mean, you look like in comparison too. You see like that move Jeremiah Smith put on Zeke Berry for that long touchdown. It's like you haven't seen that from Michigan receiver in a long, long time. But even that one play in particular, I'm remembering on the Fox broadcast, they did a breakdown of like Marsh was open in the seam, like in between like the linebacker and safeties, and it's like they were commenting on how if Bryce trusts it, like he could layer it in there and get like a 15 to 20 yard completion, but instead like he didn't really trust his read and just checked it down to someone else for maybe a 2-yard gain. So it's like there might have been some more opportunities, but clearly, Bryce just didn't feel comfortable kind of throwing it into coverage against this Ohio State secondary. And I mean, I can't tell you how many times he tried to check it down. Like that's pretty much all what they were doing in the passing game, it seemed like.
You want to talk about not taking advantage of opportunities. So Michigan, as you guys mentioned, 36-yard run on the first play from scrimmage. and get into Ohio State territory right away. And what does that drive end with? I mean, it pretty much ends there, and it's a long field goal from Dominic Zavada, and then the second snap for Ohio State after first play incompletion, second play interception, and now Michigan's got the ball in Ohio State territory again. And what do they have to settle for? Another field goal. So like I just thought a lot needed to go Michigan's way in this game, right? And that was one of the things they needed to take advantage early. Certainly get a touchdown after that takeaway. That first Ohio State touchdown, probably they needed replay to help them out and get that thing overturned, or not let them hit it on 4th and 5 to begin with. Ohio State's kicker, that first field goal, it looked like it was going left initially. Needed something like that to miss. Again, it's 27-9, and we saw the way Ohio State dominated. If they needed to, you felt like they could have opened up the offense more in the second half. But Michigan needed to take advantage, catch some more breaks, and it didn't happen.
I really thought Michigan was fortunate to be in the game at a halftime, because if you recall, there was that one stop Michigan had on the goal line with Ohio State driving. Jay-Sean Barham's flag for unsportsmanlike conduct gives Ohio State an automatic first down near the goal line. Ohio State was still held to a field goal, so they left some points off the board on the board there. You got the sense as time went on that Ohio State's playmakers were too much for Michigan, and we saw that bore out in the second half. We've talked about Michigan's dominance in this rivalry for the last 4 years, largely because of their play in the trenches. And as the game wore on Saturday, you could tell Ohio State had the bigger, more physical players on both sides of the ball. Ohio State's offensive line was doing a very good job of opening lanes and clearing the way for Bo Jackson. Michigan got very little pressure at all on Julian Sayin all game. And then Ohio State's defensive line, again, did a very good job of stopping Michigan's run game and really sealing the line of scrimmage. Again, Michigan didn't have a ton of positive yardage plays there, especially in the short and intermediate game. So Ohio State had the bigger, more rugged physical players up front, and ultimately that's what won them the game in the second half. And I thought Ohio State's 20 play, was it 84 yards that shoot up almost 12 minutes off the clock. I mean, that was vintage Michigan. That's something we'd seen years ago from the Wolverines. That was something they would do. So in a way, Ohio State kind of flipped the script on the Wolverines on Saturday.
And how much did we talk about going into the game that we thought Michigan had a mental edge heading into this matchup? And I felt like we were seeing that play out in real time early on. Like Michigan comes out with that big run, scores points on the opening drive, and gets the interception on the second Ohio State offensive play. It's like you have a quarterback in this game for the first time, throws an interception, a poor throw that he never should have thrown on the second play. It's like, wow, you have all the momentum. Ohio State's behind the 8 ball right away. That's exactly what you want. But kudos to them for regrouping and not letting that kind of shape the rest of the game. And I mean, since that interception, it was all Buckeyes.
I mean, they couldn't capitalize. They got 2 drives there. They got 6 points out of it. They couldn't even get a full touchdown out of that. And so I think if you're Ohio State coming out of that, you got to be feeling pretty good, right? Like, yes, you made mistakes. Yes, you gave up points on the first drive, but you're only down 6. All you need is a touchdown. You're in the lead. And clearly, as time wore on, Ohio State's talent, won out here.
Yeah, I mean, more than half of Michigan's yards came in the first quarter, just 39 yards in the second half. I mean, we were in the press box. I called up, Davis Warren's, stat line from the game against Ohio State last year, and it was like identical to Bryce Underwood's at that time, except I noted that, Warren had the interceptions, and then I feel like it was the next play that Underwood threw his. So, that's one of the areas that you thought, right, Michigan had an advantage on compared to last year. Maybe not, still didn't have a Heisman Trophy, candidate at quarterback, but you thought there was an upgrade there from what they brought to Columbus last year. But the stats at least really didn't bear that out. And how much of that, again, was the game plan? How much of it was the lack of other weapons around them? And how much of it was Bryce Underwood having a bad day?
Yeah, all the above. Last year you talked about the quarterback struggles and everything else, but Michigan had a sound ground game, something they could rely on. And Jordan Marshall basically being unavailable and hurt really hurt them. It made them a one-dimensional team, and quite frankly, we've talked about this all year. Michigan's passing game hasn't been anything great. Again, they're lacking weapons, and I think that's going to be a priority this offseason. They're going to have to go out and get themselves another receiver or two. Andrew Marsh is a great start, great foundation, but they need more of that, especially going up against an elite defense, number one defense in the country. You can get away with having one or two solid receivers against an inferior opponent. You're not going to do it against Ohio State. So I will point out, we talked about the time of possession advantage. Ohio State had the football twice as long as Michigan. That was even more bore out in the second half. I crunched numbers, almost 24 minutes to 6 minutes in the second half. Michigan barely had the football, and when you're trailing to begin with, that doesn't help your situation.
Life is beautiful and fragile. We fall. We get tired. And sometimes we get sick. But with Corewell Health, we are also strong. We fight disease. We battle cancer. We come together. We come back. We push forward. When the body breaks, we break through. Corewell Health. We can.
I mean, this rivalry is supposed to be pretty darn even. So the fact that Michigan, again, had won 4 in a row, last year they stole the game. There's going to be years where the other team just has the advantage. They don't have the true freshman quarterback, at least, and a lot of freshmen all over the rest of the field and all that. Michigan was playing at home, but again, I think probably in some cases, with me, I could say put a little too much stock into last year's game. Lightning struck for Michigan in that game, but it doesn't mean it was going to strike again. I was even talking to myself into the fact that, remember Colston Loveland didn't even play in that game. So we're saying, how are they going to get offense? But again, there were other ways, 2 top 15 picks along the defensive line, a healthy star running back, and then just some luck. I mean, like I said, just some things that went their way that, just didn't in this game.
Yeah, and I think you could certainly make a case Michigan's defense was much better than last year than it is this year. So they were able to hold up a little bit better, and they obviously force some turnovers and help the offense out. When you're on the field as long as Michigan's defense was all game, it eventually it's going to wear on you, and it did. Ohio State had enough playmakers to turn the clock and wear the game down, and Michigan just wasn't able to make enough plays really on both sides of the ball. So it was we talk about complementary football. Michigan played complementary football to lose the game, and that's exactly what happened.
And another thing last year too, we talked about Ohio State had some success moving the ball, but they missed 2 field goals. Like Michigan's kicker, Thomas Zavada, was money on his too, and yeah, that was the one positive for Michigan in this game was Zavada hit all 3 of his field goal attempts, including 2 from 40 plus. But this year, the Michigan defense wasn't able to keep Ohio State out of the end zone like last year, and it just wasn't the same.
Yeah, there was a lot going on in this game. Some things we haven't even hit on yet, and don't necessarily need to now that again with an 18-point cushion. But the fact that Jeremiah Smith touchdown we mentioned was reviewed, but not overturned. Jay-Sean Barham making contact with the referee, his helmet to the referee's face, and not ejected. We have a story about that. I was able to act as the pool reporter and talk to the official about that. But it's a very structured process where you're not asking follow-up questions or really or that's how it went down. So it's just they gave their interpretation. One was that yes, the player could certainly be ejected for that, but official chose that decided it didn't rise to that level. Okay. And then, the touchdown, they just said they didn't have the angle where, as far as when he crossed the goal line, whether he had it or not, which makes me think maybe, all right, they thought he still had it when he first crossed the goal line, broke the plane. So what happened after maybe didn't really matter so much. But again, these were kind of little things that were just part of a bigger picture for Michigan in this game. So yeah, they go 9-3 on the season, and we'll have future podcasts where we kind of break down, some of the things we thought about going into the year and what it means going forward. But just generally, we all said 9-3, all 3 of us, that was our prediction. And I'll just do a quick quote here. Aaron said they would not make the playoffs, but, quote, the Wolverines will be in the playoff race until the very end. A 2-game improvement and dynamic season for Underwood should be more than enough to whet the appetite of the fan base headed into 2026. exactly right. They were right there. They had a chance. They win this game. They're probably in. Ryan said they'd lose 2 out of 3 to Oklahoma, Nebraska, USC, and then lose to Ohio State. Will it be enough to earn a playoff bid? Not likely, he wrote, but still an improvement from last year. I expect Underwood to get better throughout the season and for Michigan to enter 2026 as a national title contender. And then I wrote, they go to a high-profile non-playoff bowl, if such a thing exists, and win that. And perhaps most importantly, a dynamic offense led by Bryce Underwood that has fans salivating for 2026. That last part that we all kind of hit on is the bigger question that we can get to. But how much of the offense really gives you excitement for next year? Especially given what we saw on Saturday.
Well, you want to see more from Bryce Underwood, right? You're going to want to see him make a leap in the offseason. I think Andrew Marsh might be the most intriguing part of this offense at this point. He was very good as a true freshman, and you want to see what more he can do as a second-year player. But as I said earlier, they're going to have to get more help. I think there's internal confidence in the offensive line that they'll be able to figure it out. Again, Jerome Moore's been talking all year about them playing some redshirt freshmen, some young guys up front. And I think they anticipate getting Andrew Babalola back next year. Evan Link will be healthy. I think the offensive line will take a step forward next year, but they're going to have to find another dynamic running back. They're going to have to find some more receivers to help put around Bryce Underwood to make this thing go, because I'm going to leave you guys with this. In the last 8 quarters against Ohio State this season and last, Michigan has 1 touchdown. That's not good enough.
No, not at all. And yeah, I agree with Aaron on a lot of points there. I think the offensive line, the outlook of the offensive line should be much more promising heading into next year. I think running back, you're fine. Like you're going to have Jordan Marshall back. Unsure about like Justice Haynes if he stays or if he goes, but that's a potential game breaker right there. And then Savion Hyder, the number 1 overall running back, 5-star in the 2026 class, set to sign on Wednesday, and we'll have more on Michigan's class on our next pod. But yeah, I think running back should be fine. But yeah, they need more playmakers in the passing game. They need like a dominant like pass catching, a Colston Loveland type, I think, at tight end, and another true game breaker at receiver to really take the next step. And Bryce needs to make improvement too. The fact that he only threw 9 touchdowns this year, it seemed like he showed flashes, but like when you actually look at his stats, it's like, man, before the year, if you show me his stat line, I wouldn't think that would be a pretty good season. So it's a very important offseason for Michigan.
Yeah, I just checked. You can actually go back to 9 quarters. Didn't score a touchdown in the 4th quarter of that 2023 game either, but a little different when they, still scored 30 points and won. But I get it. We could certainly dive into later, just kind of overall thoughts on the season. But again, that I wanted to make that point that we did all say 9-3, thought they'd lose this game to Ohio State. So I think again, it's like when you lose the most you're coming off a loss, so like the feeling among the fan base is maybe is negative. I think in the big picture it was a positive year, and you can see what they could do with these extra ball practices and see who they get matched up with and how they do in that game.
That's just it. Context matters here, right? Like I think if before the year, if you were to talk to most Michigan fans and say Michigan goes 9-3 and they're in the Big Ten title and playoff hunt until the end, I think they would have taken it. The problem is, as the season goes on, as you're in the week to week grind, fans get so upset and frustrated and everything else, and they want the best for their team and everything else. So they get frustrated when the best thing doesn't happen. So look, Michigan, they're building. This was really a foundational year. You can say what you want, what Sharon Morris at the beginning of the year about goals and everything else, but there are a lot of young guys playing on this team this year. I don't think that was mentioned enough. Like this was a young team, especially in the offensive side of the ball, and we saw them kind of figure themselves out this year, or work to figure themselves out. Now that the key is going to try and make that jump to where they're a legitimate power offense next year, where they can be what they want to be. It's going to take some more help and some additions, but the foundation, I think, certainly is there.
It's one more thing I just need to say about the game too, and as far as additions and improvement from for next year is they need to find a punter, man, like a more consistent punter. Like watch back again, seeing Hudson Hollenbeck shank that one in the 3rd quarter, 11-yard punt, and then 2 plays later, Ohio State scores to make it a 24-9 game instead of 17-9. It's just like inconsistent all year at that position. And when Michigan's using their punter a lot more than they'd like, you would like a little bit more production out of there. But I saw that. I was rewatching too, and I just, man, forgot how much of a swing moment that was too. And it's just that you can't have that. It's just every little thing seemed to hurt Michigan after the early interception for them to get them going.
All right, we wanted to keep this episode mostly contained to the Michigan-Ohio State game. We'll have another episode or two later in this week to kind of hit on other topics, but at least very briefly, I'll mention the Michigan men's basketball team just because of what they did, in Las Vegas last week, and with the new polls, coming out today, Michigan could be number one in the AP poll. I don't think they'll be. I think they'll at least be behind Purdue, just because of Purdue was number one and has not lost. They could stay behind Arizona too. That wouldn't shock me, but Michigan's already number one at Ken Pom. They're number one today. The net rankings came out, which is, the important number, although that one's more about what your opponents are. That's how you kind of get your NCAA tournament resume, kind of filled out, is based on, the net ranking of your opponents. But that's how they determine your ranking too, how well you've done against them. And Michigan is number one there, which is, again, this all speaks to the fact that no team in college basketball has been more just impressive so far. Michigan 7-0 start. People know what they did just in Vegas with those three dominant wins, including, two against really high quality teams. Michigan is absolutely rolling, and it's still meaningful. I'm going to ask Dusty about it here shortly, what it would mean to him to be number one. But it's relevant. It's like to see that number next to your name, when you're checking scores and stuff like that. Again, doesn't specifically matter for NCAA tournament seeding, or they don't give a trophy for who's number one on December 1st. But again, speaks to just how awesome they have been so far.
Since the tournament was in Vegas, I wonder what the odds would have been beforehand that Michigan would win all three games by 30 plus points. Truly incredible.
Yeah, they were an underdog to Gonzaga, so and very small, moderate favorites in the other two games. So yeah, pretty wild run for them in the Players Era Championship, and extra $2 million for doing it. So we'll have plenty more coverage on MLive.com/Wolverines with signing day coming up this week as well. We'll have some recruiting news to talk about. Again, you can check it all out at MLive.com/Wolverines. Thanks for listening.